Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I hope the weekend was good. We had quite a busy one actually, most enjoyable. Went to a charity ball hosted by the British High Commissioner on Friday night at the Radisson Blu, and it's a totally different perspective on Nairobi up there. It feels as if you're in Manhattan or something. And then on Saturday, I had a very enjoyable Guy Fawkes night at Kenton and dinner with Cornell of Nestle, and that was most enjoyable as well. Brexit flashbacks are haunting traders as they brace for the US election. And, we've had a dramatic move in the markets this morning. The FBI fellow came in with another intervention saying nothing new, move along kind of thing. And we saw gold come off, Peso rally as you'd expect. So we've got to keep an eye on it. It probably is a little bit of worth a nibble right now because they've moved Trump down to less than 10 on the prediction markets. If you haven't taken one, I'd recommend a river cruise along the Thames, a different perspective and gorgeous last night. That's Alistair Hilton, who operates out of Chiswick. Macro thoughts, old money, bazaar. This is from Shaima Khalil. Take a look at, you got some old Syrian pounds with Hafez Assad, all kinds. It's pretty extraordinary. The FBI letter, which was released yesterday, late yesterday, boosts risk assets early morning in Asia. I'll come to that in a moment. The VIX volatility index, which is the fear index, was up 9 days in a row. Probably comes off today. That was the longest run of consecutive daily rises on record, by the way. The pound had its best week since 2009 on the court decision and on the idea that the Bank of England will not be cutting rates this year. Home thoughts, this caught my attention. Manny Pacquiao tweets, Victoria, Senator Manny Pacquiao makes history tonight by being the first ever senator to win the WBO welterweight belt. Okay, political reflections. The FBI director issued a new letter saying it has not changed the conclusion on Hillary Clinton since deciding not to charge her. The latest intervention from the FBI director came 2 days before Election Day. He added, based on our review, we have not changed our conclusions that we expressed in July. I think the FBI director is evidently a little bit Warholian, looking for his 15 minutes of fame, where he certainly gained them, didn't he? The Peso is set for its biggest gain in over 8 months on this news. This is from David Inglis. Let's look at his chart. Average of 6 most recent live caller national polls has Clinton 2.3 points ahead. This is 538's popular vote estimate is Clinton plus 2.9. That was obviously before the announcement by the FBI. Social media analysis pointing to Trump upset. This is Tech Central. Brandeis analysis of social media chatter accurately predicted that Britain would vote for Brexit despite major polls pointing to the opposite happening. Now new analysis by the companies pointing to a possible upset in the US election. Social media is a scary place for Democrats right now. The polls have favored Hillary Clinton for months. Experts have begun discussing her cabinet choices. Pundits have been wondering by just how much Donald Trump will lose. How big will the landslide be? How severe the repudiation of his public persona? But after analysis of social media data, using a crowd-integrated, sentiment-driven research approach, we have seen a possible shock arising in the conclusion of this unprecedentedly rancorous US election. Positive sentiment is soaring for Trump nationwide. That is correct. Trump is crushing it online, and there is only a matter of days before Election Day on November the 8th. New York is saying the reason that the Clinton and the Trump campaigns are embracing negativity, a strategy that so many voters profess to detest, is somewhat paradoxical. saying essentially it works. Julian Assange gave a 25-minute interview to John Pilger. RT published it yesterday, Secret World of the US Election. Got to watch it, it's pretty strong stuff. Interestingly, putting the whole Libya situation at Hillary's door. I wrote that piece in October 2011, Gaddafi's body in a freezer, what's the message? Have a look at that again. IS foretold of an apocalyptic showdown with the West in Dabiq, Syria. In the end, they went with barely a whimper. Mosul oil fires burning for over a month now. The air is so thick with oily smoke that white sheep are now black. The police tactical unit has been deployed carrying rifles. Protesters are chanting Hong Kong independence. This is a report from the Hong Kong Free Press. China seems to have found a way through this, but let's keep an eye on it. It looks volatile. South Koreans are ashamed over their leader's secretive advisor. Tremendous numbers of people in the streets there. Kim.com, who seems firmly aligned with Trump and Assange, says the rule of law is an illusion. The rule of money is the reality. I like this tweet from the DP RK News Service. Near, far, wherever you are, we believe the heart does go on. Once more you open the door and you're here in our heart, and our heart will go on. Let's move on to the currency markets where we've had a bit of a movement. Euro dollar 110.69, dollar index 97.429, Japanese yen 104.52, softened up quite a bit, 140 ticks. Swiss franc 0.9754, the pound 124.30, the Aussie 0.7672, India rupee 66.695, South Korean won 1141.60, the Rial 322.39, Egyptian pound, which has had that dramatic slide since it was devalued, 1540. Most people still think it's got further to fall, and the South African rand last trading at 1356.77. I still think Gordon has bested the president, and the more the president tries to sort of push back at Gordon, the more he's going to weave a tangled weave for himself. Dollar index got a Foley-related pop. Let me put up a 5-day chart. China says its economy has grown at the same rate for 3 quarters straight. How fishy is that? I spoke about that many times earlier in the year. Gold, that's come off a bit, 1291.04. That's all related to the idea that Trump's odds of winning this election are now significantly reduced. Should Trump win, we'll be at 1400. Crude oil trading at $45 in New York, having popped up about 1.33%. I like this photograph, Moscow, old and new. The city area looms. That's from Alex Thompson. Venezuelans give up on counting piles of cash and start weighing them. That's Bloomberg Emerging Markets. Sub-Saharan Africa, interesting piece in Global Geneva, how Africa's corrupt leaders stay in power. The single most influential factor is that Sub-Saharan African economies are crucially dependent on export revenues. The inflow of foreign aid and loans from international institutions or commercial banks. This enables ruling elites to control incoming and outgoing financial flows. This they do by extracting rents, which they then use to bolster their hold on power through patronage networks and naturally to enrich themselves even further. Many of Africa's economies have become inordinately dependent on export revenues, primarily based on agricultural or mineral commodities. In most cases, this reliance on exports also is coupled with a chronic failure to reinvest earned revenues, including loans and international aid, into the necessary diversification and broadening of those export-led economic sectors critical to development. Domestic, industrial, agricultural production, commercial networks providing consumer goods, processed foods and fuel would generate jobs plus a significant and vital domestic tax base. Instead, these economies, largely because of insufficient reinvestment in local infrastructure, performed poorly and so explain economic stagnation. Income from exports is skimmed off by political elites and sent abroad to be lodged in banks or invested in Western economies, rather than being used as the seed corn for domestic growth. Regimes operating this way only become fragile when export revenues fall or when they suffer a loss of foreign loans, generally a result of severe indebtedness, or because banks refuse or are not allowed to continue to fund those engaging in glaring mismanagement and corruption. The ensuing fall from Western monetary grace can in turn lead to a loss of domestic stability. In recent years, however, one source of external backing that seems to have enabled a variety of gatekeepers, from Mugabe to Bashir, Dos Santos, Meles Zenawi, Haile Mariam Desalegn, and Museveni, to keep their options open and even defy Western opprobrium or even sanctions, is China. That's an important point to note. Somali soldiers and policemen inspect the scene of a suicide car explosion near the parliament in the capital Mogadishu. This was November 5. And obviously we've seen the retreat of a number of folks from the Ethiopians, amongst others. I'm not afraid of jail. I've been to jail during the struggle, Zuma told a cheering crowd in his home KwaZulu-Natal province. South African oil shares down 1.99% this year, below 50,000 for the first time since the end of February 2016. Dollar rand last trading 13.5677. That's firmed up as the markets have understood that President Zuma no longer has a carte blanche. Have a look at the size of the first day devaluation in the Egyptian pound compared to other countries that devalued in the last 3 years. The Egyptian EGX30 has surged. It's now up 33.46% year to date. A lot of that is because of the devaluation of the currency. Nigerian oil share down 5.8% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is down 14.47% this year. S&P downgrades Mozambique's credit rating to CC and says its restructuring plan is tantamount to default. I wrote about this over the weekend. Mozambique from boom to bust, a cautionary tale. Let me put up a photograph of the evening in Maputo that I took a couple of years ago. The Mozambique news agency said in a statement that Kroll would undertake an audit of the Mozambique tuna company Amato, Pro Indicus and Mozambique Asset Management. My piece over the weekend is about Safaricom. I said Bob is right, Kenya Inc. needs 5 Safaricoms. This week past, Safaricom released its first half earnings. The centrality of Safaricom to the Nairobi Securities Exchange is shown when you compare Safaricom's market capitalization, which is $8.429 billion, to the entire market cap of the stock exchange, which is $20.297 billion. Therefore, Safaricom constitutes 41.52% of the total value of the stock exchange. The markets emit a very pure signal, and this is the first signal to note. Mr. Collymore has presided over a golden age for shareholders. The total return for shareholders during his tenure clocked 711%. That return surely ranks in the top percentile worldwide. This is the second signal to note. Mr. Collymore spoke of how Kenya Inc. needs to produce the equivalent of 5 Safaricoms a year. He has a point. Early in the week, Safaricom issued their sustainability report, which measures the true value of Safaricom's business, and it calculates the total value Safaricom created for Kenyan society in the full year 2016 was around $4.13 billion, 10.9 times greater than the financial profit the company made during the same period. Let's return to the first half earnings release. First half revenue topped 100 billion shillings to clock 102.09 billion. First half profit before tax was plus 30.6%. Cash and cash equivalents surged 126% to 43.02 billion. I once described Safaricom as a cash machine, and a 126% surge in cash and cash equivalents confirm that. Non-voice revenue, 53.4% of total revenue, overtook voice revenue, 46.6% of total revenue for the first time. Voice eked out a 1.1% gain. Bob said, I've been saying for years voice is not dead. We've got 1 million people added to the population every year. We haven't moved into the bundled voice thing that many Europeans did and wish they hadn't. My conclusion is you could argue that voice has confounded expectations exactly because of the demographic dividend. M-Pesa, which is ubiquitous and has helped Kenya Inc. reframe itself as the hotbed of mobile money and financial inclusion, saw revenue surge 33.7% to 25.9 billion shillings. Some of this surge was juiced by the betting phenomenon, I am sure, but the bottom line is that M-Pesa is still in a parabolic and go-go growth phase. Transaction volumes have grown 27% on a CAGR basis over 5 years and clocked an eye-popping 3.226 trillion for the 6-month reporting period. At some point, Safaricom might consider spinning off M-Pesa by a separate listing. The fastest growing slice of Safaricom's revenues remain mobile data, which accelerated 46.3% to 13.4 billion. Today, there are more than 10 million smartphones on Safaricom's network. Data usage per customer per month grew 44% to 231 MBs year on year. The mobile data curve is entirely correlated to the recent arrival of the information century. The speed of the arrival is just breathtaking. Interestingly, when I asked Bob whether he was worried by the competition, he said this: we're always scanning the horizon. The competition does not keep me awake. It's new emerging technologies like WhatsApp that keep me awake. By the way, WhatsApp did not disrupt Safaricom. What happened is we all started sending packets and packets of data across WhatsApp, juicing the mobile data curve. SMS revenue registered a plus 8.1% gain. Safaricom is an outlier in statistics. An outlier is an observation point that is distant from other observations. Its centrality to the securities exchange in Kenya, it cannot be gainsaid. From the early days of the Simuya Jamii through the 5-shilling scratch card, through a proposed rollout of up to 1,000 4G base stations over the next few months, they have transformed lives, connected us to each other, helped Kenyans meet their daily needs, M-Pesa, and connected us to the 21st century. As the rest of Africa sits in a deep funk, East African Kenya is shining bright exactly because Safaricom gave optionality to Kenyans. When folks speak to the fact that Kenya is resilient and diversified, you have to recognize that a lot of this was due to Safaricom. They democratized Kenya and made a toolbox, voice, banking, and internet available. This was as revolutionary as a 711% 6-year return is. Today, Safaricom is on the radar of every international investor. I cannot think of any other sub-Saharan African equity which occupies the same degree of mind share. The share price has been in a bull market for more than 5 years. There are a few more years to go. FT Lex is talking of Safaricom's shift from voice to data will keep up growth, but he's saying the bullish outlook does not come cheap. At an enterprise value 9 times its estimated EBITDA, Safaricom has never been so dear. That also looks pricey compared to most telecom companies anywhere, but my point is it's an outlier. It is hard to see what might push Safaricom off course, though. More competition on financial products from banks, perhaps a smartphone spread across in Kenya, yet Safaricom is quite a lead over all its rivals. Only a serious change in the weather, like a currency crisis or political upheaval, seems likely to slow its move to greener lands. Safaricom share price total return up 39.2% this year. We went through all the numbers, but if you didn't see the presentation, the link is there as well. I like this. The Jacaranda propaganda in Nairobi is surreal from above. That's Sam Dabiq. Nairobi all share down 4.076% this year. NSE 20 down 19.53% this year. Kenya Airways' chairman Michael Joseph says a deal with KLM says its deal with KLM is set for renegotiations, and he's off to meet the CEO in 2 weeks' time. Kenya Airways is up 39.79% this year. KLM owns about 400 million shares of Kenya Airways. A Kenyan whose name is Rasik Kantaria, he's the chairman of Prime Bank, has turned up to be the second largest shareholder of Uganda's troubled grain bank. Instaproduct's CEO Dhiren Chandaria is looking to buy out the other shareholders, and take a look at that report. And finally, if you want to dive into any share on the stock market, the link is the last link on the Bridge wrap-up, so do take the opportunity if you wish. Once again, thank you kindly for stopping by.